So welcome everyone, I'm Kirsten Winkler, this is EDUKWEST, and as every week we are on the search for better education. Today I'm very happy to be joined by Peter Hopkins. He is the co-founder and president of Big Think. Peter, welcome to the program.
Kirsten, thank you very much for having me.
So when, let's say since Big Think has launched, and of course I went back a little bit in time in order to prepare well for our interview, and I found that, certainly as everything evolves, so Big Think did, and however, people had a little bit a difficult time whether to put you more in the video interview space, or then, of course, we have the articles. Later on, we will talk about 2 new products you have launched just recently. So maybe in your own words, what is Big Think all about?
Well, we have certainly evolved, although I will say those of us sort of deep in it and there at its founding always had a single vision. And we want to create a knowledge company. We think a knowledge company is one that stands between media and education. Mm-hmm. And its purpose is to identify what you need to know to be relevant, productive, and happy in the 21st century, to garner those ideas from the world's smartest people, to distill them so you understand them as quickly as possible, and ultimately, and this is what we're working on, to measure that and to show you that measurement so you can track your own progress and accelerate that in the interest of learning more.
I see. And so then, was there a certain event in your past, or maybe your co-founders' background that you said you want to launch something in the knowledge space? I imagine of all the different possibilities you had after graduating.
Well, there was 2 moments that I always think back to. One was actually in university. I was studying introductory economics, mm-hmm. very most basic stuff, and I was confronted with a very basic economic equation that put together the different pieces of the economy. And it said, part of it is what we create, part of it is what we get from the earth, the resources, part of it is what is in our heads, and that determines pretty much everything we've got. And as I looked at this equation more and more, I realized what we have in our heads is going to be an increasingly important part of the puzzle. What we create depends on it. And what we have from natural resources is diminishing. And that began to turn in my head over and over. And this was at a moment this is probably 2002, I was a sophomore in college, where the internet was really beginning to find its legs and beginning to suggest some promising new applications. Video was just sort of emerging. And I thought, my gosh, it's likely the tool that's going to ultimately answer this question. Fast forward several years, I was a producer after college at the Charlie Rose Show, which is a mm-hmm. interview show in the U.S. And that was an interesting opportunity to be exposed to the most influential people in the world, heads mm-hmm. of state from every country, leaders of industry from global corporations, and leading figures in the arts and culture. And I was this is where I met my current business partner, Victoria Brown, and we, in talking to each other, were constantly struck by what interesting things we were hearing, but they were being lost in mm-hmm. an hour of solid conversation. And it seemed like such a shame, because these little nuggets buried in 60 minutes of TV, lost on the airwaves, they appear once and disappeared. We thought, my gosh, if we could isolate those, find them, pull them out, mm-hmm. and then recontextualize them, they could do something so much more. These experts could really be teachers. And that's really, we want to learn, this is what we want to learn. These are the role models, these are the people mm-hmm. who are doing it. And it was those 2 insights that kind of collided to inform what ultimately became Big Think and continues to sort of guide what we do today.
And then you launched like early 2008, I think. And what's it then like when you are, I mean, certainly both of you business partners, you have your network, and of course you can access the resources of your investors and mentors and so on. But when you're very much at the beginning of being a media, or better, as you put it, knowledge company, and you have the aim of really attracting the most innovative or the best people to do something with Big Think, how do you manage to get them? And I suppose over time it gets a little bit easier, and I mean you build up a very nice reputation, but what was it like at the beginning, and sort of take us over through the first steps of how you approached people and set up the knowledge base?
Sure. Well, it's a very good question that has a couple of parts to it. One answer is that we were the beneficiaries of the moment in which we were doing it. There were really no original online-based platforms doing what we wanted to do. And it was a moment when everyone was very curious about the web. They were intrigued and they knew they should be thinking about it, but they didn't know what they should be thinking about or how they should be engaging with it. So to come along from where we had been, which is working at, on public broadcasting for this particular television show, and making a case that there needed to be such a thing as Big Think, and leveraging the expertise that we had in reaching out to these people, it was not as difficult as one might have thought, because we were able to do it very strategically, and we also had the right contacts, and we were appealing to them on the basis of something they found intriguing but didn't totally understand. And that helped, and then we were able to show them what we were doing very quickly, that it looked good, it was kind of unimpeachable in its content. We were not there to trip them up. Indeed, this remains true to this day. I am not interested in who you've slept with. I am not interested in what drugs you've done. I am not interested in what crimes you've committed. Well, perhaps in a learning sort of way. We really want to know what you've done well and how you did it well. And when you failed in that process, isolating those moments to understand why that happened and what you learned from it, and then connecting it back to a bigger set of ideas that we have isolated as the ones that we think the world should know. And when you tell people that and help them understand their own experiences with respect to this larger body of ideas and issues, they really embrace that concept. Everyone wants to share their wisdom, and they don't always have the tools, and certainly do not have the various tools you need to do it on the web. I mean, I would argue we don't have yet every tool I would like us to have, and certainly plan for us to have, but we have a lot more than most. And if we can facilitate that, it's a pretty powerful combination.
Definitely, and as you said, you have a lot already, and many more means maybe to just facilitate and invite some people into your production studio, rather than so making it as easy and painless for them as possible, and then to produce something, and you already mentioned something that also looks good and looks professional, which probably in these days when users are readers or viewers getting increasingly sophisticated, I think also has a certain importance to it. And then just breaking the barriers down for the people you want to interview and you want to have as experts.
Right, and I think it's a very interesting question about the value of production, the value of appearance, because we are accustomed over the last 30 or 40 years to the rise of very high production values in the closed medium of television, where TV and marketing got very, very good at marginal improvements that turned it into something spectacular and beautiful, and then suddenly the pipes opened up, and anybody could contribute, but in a relatively, actually vastly less produced way, and the question becomes, what of those insights and abilities from Hollywood's, enormous success over 30, 40, 50 year span really need to be and should be borrowed and carried over to this new open bandwidth, and where can the business model support them in the interest of this overarching goal of ours, at least, to increase engagement and therefore accelerate knowledge exchange. And that is a question that we think about all the time, because obviously there's a lot of bells and whistles, there's a lot of beautiful stuff you could do that will not do that. And I'm constantly struck by those who do have that opportunity, who use it or incorrectly or to no particular end. And it's both an opportunity and a challenge, and I think we've done a good job in doing it in efficient ways, gradually, in a scalable way. But as we grow and ask ourselves which are the next big investments that we want to make, asking what the payoff is going to be for the user and whether it really will deliver value is a big question that is always on our minds.
Sure. And then, as you said, probably also evaluating at what point does it make sense to add something new. And, we will soon come to two new things, big thing launched, but let me ask one more general question, sort of to get the introduction to the letter then. Big Think as a knowledge company, and we see that also increasingly, I would say, in media companies, that they definitely see education as something that is maybe worth or even a certain duty to invest themselves in more deeply. Like we have now New York Times education, but I could also take a prominent German newspaper, Die Zeit. They have their academy, and I mean, Big Think has a couple of outlets, not only talking about knowledge and learning, but also education, and myself, of course, like forward-thinking education and technology, what might be possible, what is probably going to happen. So what is the aim or duty of doing something as a media or knowledge company in education today?
Sure. Well, I think it depends on where you're coming from. I do believe that the existing media companies are doing it because they have to, in the sense that as a business mandate, they were constituted under old business models and have been challenged by these epic changes that surround them, and having enormous stores of content and very talented people who they're likely paying under old strictures and old models. They need to think of creative ways of repurposing it and deriving additional value from it. So those companies that have gone in that direction, who have existed before, who weren't created with the express idea of knowledge or education in mind, I think I've done it for that reason. Doesn't mean I don't think that it doesn't. Clearly, I think anybody who's involved in education has a high purpose as part of what they do. But I do think that whether it is you're coming at it from a necessity or out of a sense, directly out of a sense of purpose, probably will inform, at least in part, how you approach it and how you think about it. Those companies, and I would include Big Think in this, that were created with that in mind, with that as a part of the vision and mission. Like any, are starting with a blank slate. And that means on every level, the company is built and constituted around that purpose, and it's a part of the DNA. It's not something they're trying to embed in the DNA, which can be a little bit trickier and harder to do. And it's something that also they have the agility of nimbleness and smallness, which I actually, I always like to say small is the new big, which, it's a great advantage. It's a smaller ship that turns more quickly.
Yeah.
And so that's I think is the fundamental distinction. Then I think then it becomes down to how you use your resources, how you measure your success, how you pick your topics, who you're engaging in the equation. And everybody thus far has had a slightly different take on that. And we'll see. Only time will tell. I mean, the people who will succeed in this are the ones who are going to be able to show that they've delivered the most value, and they can point to some basis on that it's they're not just saying it, but they can show it. And there is another big question right there. How do you do that? But that, I think, is how it will be done.
Do you think that as all big media outlets have an editorial, have a certain tone, maybe even political opinion, that this could be tricky when then talking about education? I mean, we see that about textbooks, that depending on in which state you are, that they are sometimes modified depending on apparently the political opinion or even some maybe religious opinions that are very strong in a certain state or region.
I mean, it is a very big problem, and I think the larger problem at hand is the degree to which education is constrained by the politics of wherever it is. If the very thing that is changing most quickly is knowledge and information, then the ways that we deliver it and think about it must change, at a pace. And therefore, I think that places where you're going to see the most quick and disruptive change will probably not be in those parts of education that have found themselves most tightly bound, because they deal with topics that hit on political and sensitive topics. That's why we think that, that the areas that we care about involve these outside topics, these meta topics, things like how to get a job, which are a little bit less politically sensitive than whether evolution exists or not. That's a topic, of course, in the States, in certain states within the United States that is still very charged. And I think avoiding those sensitivities is advisable for entrepreneurs and content creators. Additionally, I think that educators broadly and people generally need to recognize that the ideas that we need to be focused on and the ways that we need to think about them are actually outside of any political debate. The political debates that exist, to my mind, reflect the fact that we have not thought about the issues in the right way. I'm sure this is true in Germany, and it's certainly true in, we're based in New York and, are an American company. The political debates here, the intractable ones, that have gone on for 30, 40, 50 years, I think reflect a certain level of small thinking and a certain failure to integrate what are reasonable positions and vantage points on both sides, that neither of which fully capture or answer the question. And that's why they have prevailed. And continuing to look at them that way will only arrive at the same outcomes, which is no outcome.
Yeah, you're probably very right saying that. And on the other hand, being a company that eventually also has the objective and needs to make some money, having a certain hands-on approach is probably also a good thing to pursue. And then now we saw the Floating University and Big Think Careers both came into being, if you will. And as you said, for people all around the world, finding a job and having the skills to convince and being attractive to employers and future employers is something very essential. And how do both Floating University and Big Think Careers help me in achieving this?
Sure.
Let's put it a little bit more general. Why have you built them?
Absolutely. So these are two e-learning platforms we've created, which take our multimedia content and layer them on top of e-learning platforms where there's other related resources. And what really distinguishes them both is that they look at the world in an interdisciplinary, big picture way. They say, the premise of both is that to succeed in this new world, you have to know how to think. You have to it's not about finding the right answers, because the answers are changing with the currents, as the currents beneath us accelerate and move faster. You need to be able to ask the right questions so that in each new state of change, you can reinterpret and leverage that foundational base to adjust and adapt and hopefully predict and preempt and be more in charge of yourself and more able to guide and lead the companies and collaborations and groups that you work with. And there are many companies out there who are focused on specific narrow skill sets. Things like, this is how you use Photoshop, and this is how you use XYZ tool. And those are important. Those are skills certainly needed in the moment. We have scaled back a bit and said, okay, those are tools that will help you pick up the skills of the instant, but you still much more fundamentally need to understand where they fit in and how to think about the scenarios and the challenges that you will ultimately try to resolve and improve with them. And that framework is going to stay with you a lot longer and kind of be your compass, your true north in making plans for the future. So the two platforms, and there will be a third rolling out soon called Big Think Pro. Floating University, which actually distinguishes itself with, I would say, world-class Hollywood-style production values. It was a major investment as a part of a partnership we did with a company in New York called the Jack Parker Corporation. And it is focused on the university learning, sort of this notion that you come to school to learn how to learn and that set of issues. And what we did there was we recruited 12 of the top professors from different fields, everyone from Lawrence Summers, the former president of Harvard and Treasury Secretary of the United States, to Paul Bloom, who's a psychologist at Yale, to Steven Pinker, who's a linguist and a cognitive scientist. And what we asked them to do was to distill their entire field into an hour or less. So one single lecture, their entire field, what you should know about it if you never know anything more about it ever again. The idea being that the course that would be created would be an opportunity to see the connections between these fields and the relative merits and points of overlap and integration in how they solve and look at problems.
Yeah.
And this course it's being offered at Harvard, Yale, and Bard in the United States right now for credit. So it's being taught on the campus in seminars where it serves as the sort of text and reference material. So the students enter the class, they talk about what they've seen, that serves as the discussion framework platform, and then they go back home, they watch the lectures, they engage with each other online. And it's kind of taking Sal Khan's model, but applying it to university education. And it has been a great success as far. It was the most popular course at Harvard, Yale, and Bard in terms of how many students applied relative to the number of seats available. And our hope is that we can scale the model. We are offering it to free to students at schools who offer it for credit. So it is completely free to them. So any school in the world that will offer it for credit, we will give it to for free.
However, if I'm a young professional and I feel that I probably should deepen my knowledge or get a very good, compact overview of a wide field, I think I can also purchase it at a very, to my mind, reasonable price of around $500, I think, and as a personal investment, I think that's also something worthwhile thinking, with then the potential of having many more career options with that knowledge.
That's right, and currently the price is $500. We are working on a range of ways of making the course, both breaking into smaller pieces so individual pieces are less expensive, as well as adding functionality to the platform so that there are richer interactions within it. We'll be offering actually a seminar that is going to launch in November with Dr. Michio Kaku, who's a theoretical physicist and one of the lecturers. And basically, it will be a month-long seminar predicated on his single lecture, during which he will be doing several live office hours where students can ask him questions, and there will be actually a certificate of accomplishment that will be issued to those who meet certain standards at the end of the month-long seminar, and that will be less than $100. We'll be actually formally announcing that in a few weeks at the New York Public Library, an event with Dr. Kaku.
So thanks for giving us a little bit of pre-scoop already.
Yes.
It's great.
That's the first announcement. There you go.
Great. And do you want to share a little bit more about Big Think Pro with us and Big Think Careers, or is it too early to talk about it in public?
No, not at all. Not at all. So Big Think Careers, if we look at it as a continuous spectrum where Floating University aims at this sort of 4-year period, but tries to make that fundamental learning available to everybody, because quite frankly, everyone needs it and we need it in an ongoing way for all the aforementioned reasons. Big Think Careers kind of picks up at the end of that experience and says, what do you need to focus on specifically in terms of the big ideas, the big picture ideas that are most relevant to the job search and the job and your value as an employee. And these are ideas that we're hearing echoed by others. One of my favorites recently is the founder of LinkedIn, Reid Hoffman, has a book called The Startup of You. This is a big idea, this notion that we have to think of ourselves as an entrepreneur, even when we're not technically one. That means a set of a mindset that says you are a problem solver in a set of changing problems. And wherever you are, whatever you do, you need to have a sense of responsibility and an eagerness to engage those changing circumstances in the interest of your team, your company, yourself, your school, whatever you're doing. It's no longer enough to be a cog in the wheel. Things change too fast. The mechanics of it are changing in some cases every day, certainly faster than they used to at 30, 40, 50-year cycles. And this expectation that you will just go in, work your 8 hours, do exactly what you do like a human machine, and then be done with it, and that will be enough to fulfill the expectations and the needs of wherever you are, it's misplaced. And where there is a lot of discord right now is the sense that people who have done that or expected to do that and are frustrated and feel that they have been somehow let down because that no longer satisfies the needs of the world in which we live, they need to wake up and embrace a certain personal responsibility that recognizes that unfortunately is not the world we live in, and this tool is meant to begin to explore that reality and all of its different dimensions.
Great.
Yeah, and Big Think Pro is actually on similar themes. It says now you're in a company, now you are actually in this position, you're in a position of leadership perhaps. What are the ideas that you need to have command of that will embed thought leadership, a perspective on the future into the DNA of your organization so that every member of it is able to interpret what they see through this broader lens. And this is critical because every CEO we talk to, every entrepreneur, great entrepreneur that we have through Big Think speaks on a kind of similar theme. They all are challenging themselves or asking themselves difficult questions about what is coming down the road. We had an event recently with one of the heads of the major global banks who was echoing this sentiment. No one knows exactly, but there are ways of seeing more clearly. And the more that your organization can do that, and the more that that information feeds from the bottom up and the top down, that organization will survive and thrive more than others. It's just the competitive mandate.
Definitely through asking the right questions. And as you pointed out, even after having secured a job, I mean, it doesn't stop you. As is constantly evolving, you have to bring value to the company and then also see how to evolve on a personal level as well. So yeah, that's three very interesting products, I think, for our viewers. So then we should of course mention, I mean, probably many people will already know it, but the website is of course bigthink.com. Peter, other good ways to know more about the individual products, or is there one sort of other big outlet where you would say people should go there and just then see from that point where they want to head and look in the direction they are most interested in?
Sure. Well, I mean, great place to start is bigthink.com. And I encourage you to check out Disrupting Education, Kirsten's wonderful blog, which is one of my favorites and one of my most regular reads on Big Think. As far as more information about our platforms, there are links from the bottom of our homepage, and our site is going through an evolution of its own to bring more of the spirit and the structure of this sort of everyday curriculum to bear. Through our editorial, we just went through a kind of cosmetic overhaul. We're about to go through a little more fundamental structural one that will unify these products into the everyday experience of Big Think and offer our users a way of experiencing a kind of popular curriculum at their own speed through the kind of media forms that they're used to online, that are designed in that way but can build up a little bit more from the sum of their parts and maybe ultimately carry them into these platforms, particularly as they become fully available to the public. Only Floating University now is one can subscribe to. Soon Big Think Careers will be the same, and then Big Think Pro will also both launch for institutional subscribers as well as be accessible for individual subscription. And whether you just take the free stuff, which there will be plenty of, and that will be expanding, or you find your way down one of these paid course routes, we really are open to and look forward to feedback, ideas, My email is peter@bigthink.com. Pretty easy, and any thoughts I am always welcome to.
Well, thank you so much for talking about Big Think today. That I'm very happy to be contributing a little piece to, at least. And was really great fun and good to be educated more about it.
Well, thank you so much, Kristen. I really appreciate the opportunity.